The opinions and statements expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of WWDB, its staff, or management.
Entrepreneur, author, and financial consultant Mark Bernstein helps high-performing entrepreneurial business owners create a vision for the future and follow through on their goals and intentions. Ange Honorato is a business growth strategist who blends psychology and business together to create conscious leaders and business owners who impact the world. Founders Forum is a radio show podcast sharing the real stories behind entrepreneurship as founders discover more about themselves while providing valuable lessons and some fun and entertainment for you. Now, here's Mark and Ange.
Good morning, America. Good morning, Philadelphia. Good morning, wherever you are in the world this morning. By the way, I say good morning. It could be any time of day if you're listening to our podcast, but on the radio right now, it's morning. And I just want to mention something, Ange, about why I've been saying that. I've been thinking about the psychology where I got that. And it's not Good Morning Vietnam. It's not Robin Williams. It's actually Arlo Guthrie. So my dog's name is Arlo. So I have a neighbor that whenever he sees my dog and we're out walking, he has to quote a few verses from Alice's Restaurant. When I think Arlo Guthrie, I don't think of Alice's Restaurant. I think of Good Morning America, how are you? Which is a song he didn't even write. It was written by Steve Goodman. But that's what I come in here and I just like, good morning. So here we are. And, I was thinking on the way in here, Ange, about time. I've been thinking about it the last few days because time can either feel really short, like when you have a really busy day and it just goes by and all of a sudden years go by and your kids have grown up or whatever it is. And there's other times when if you have time to just be peaceful, to sit and think or meditate or whatever, time can like stand still and go real slowly. And I've been thinking about having awareness about the difference between the two. What's your perspective on that? That's probably something you've thought about.
Oh, absolutely. And I have a lot of time to think about it, usually driving into the studio here. And if you're in the Philly area, you know how much fun it is to sit on the Schuylkill Expressway in the morning. So I have that pleasure. And so, yeah, actually what I think about that and what I've learned is it's almost looking at when time gets compressed, right? So all of a sudden we're in May, for example. It feels like the year just started. Yep. But the difference between when you're really heavily involved in a project or something that you enjoy, the time, evaporates. And other times it can just sit still. And other times it feels like it's just dragging on. So it's interesting that you bring up that topic because while I was driving in and sitting in that so wonderful traffic and trying to reframe that for me this morning, I had the thought, I was listening to a podcast, interestingly, with Barbara Corcoran, who most people know her as just the Shark Tank lady or one of them. And but really, for 40 years, she's been the most prominent female real estate mogul in New York City. Right?
Yeah, she's a powerhouse.
She's an absolute powerhouse. And so listening to her and tell her story and her ideas around success and being successful in business brought up the idea to me about persistence. And, I try to think about these things every day, different topics, and how does persistence interact in my own life? Am I persistent on the things that only I want to do? Am I persistent about the things that really drive, that are needle movers in my life and business? And her story is so amazing, and I think it's also a perfect segue into our introduction to our guest today, which we'll talk about in a minute. But in the studio with us, we have Arlene Zizza, founder of Zizza Highway Services, which is a female-owned and certified women-owned business in the highway construction vegetation management space. And we'll hear her story in a minute, but it is the epitome of persistence. So, but I'm curious, Mark, throwing it back to you real quick, how does that fit in with you? Obviously, you're a business owner. You've been doing it for a long time. You've pivoted many times. How does the idea of persistence fit into you in your life and work?
Well, it's such a part of me that I don't know how people don't have it. Let's put it that way. It's anything that you want to do that comes with challenges. Anything great you want to do has to come with challenges, and that's very rare that people just break through the first time and that's it. That's the end of the story. We talk to a lot of successful people on the show and in our practices, and it's, I don't know of anybody that has made it, whatever that means, or is making it, or is on a journey a successful journey that hasn't had to just move through lots of challenges. So persistence is to me just a necessary ingredient of moving forward in life.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's interesting, and I'm going to introduce Arlene formally here in a minute, but on that last piece that you said, it's a necessary ingredient in life and business. So one of the cool things I took away from Barbara's story is that, and maybe people know this already, but one of the reasons that prompted her to be so successful is her partner of 7 years in life and in business hit her blindsided one day and said he was leaving her to marry somebody else. And then he, on the way out the door, told her that she would never be successful without him, to which within 3 hours...
Them's fighting words.
Exactly. So she said that was a defining moment for her because she didn't pack up and crumble. She went upstairs 3 floors up in the building, rented out her own office, and started her own company, and clearly left him in the dust. So
I love that story.
It's really phenomenal, and you've got to check it out. She's got some great stories about how she went head to head and won against Donald Trump.
I can't wait to ask Arlene about this because I know she's had some of that.
She's got amazing stories. And so yes, with that, I want to formally welcome Arlene to our little podcast here and tell a little bit about her story. And Mark, I know you've got a lot of great questions for her, but again, Arlene's story is one of, she will tell her backstory a little bit, but saw a need out in the world, decided that being female was no barrier for her to enter into whatever it is she wanted to do. And I think it's a really inspiring story. And, welcome, Arlene. Thanks for joining us today.
Good morning, Arlene.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I don't have a story like you just said about not having a man in my life because obviously, I've had Mike in this business for the entire time, right there with me, and as my sons got older, they are also a big part of the company. So I don't have that story, but I have a lot of stories about not being, the person that people say that I am today. I think it drove me every place I went where I was turned away because I'm a woman in a man's world in this business that I'm in. But I again, like her, I think it just drove me to the success I'm in today.
Arlene, on that, since you mentioned that, I'm fascinated about your story. And, I'm sure, I just imagine that you've been in rooms with powerful men or men who thought they were powerful or strong men. And you've been in situations where I'm sure, the only woman in the room. And
every single time to this day. And
I'm sure you had to have strength in those situations. I don't know if you had that from day one or that's something that developed.
I've had that from day one. Just being right out of high school, being in the automotive world. It started for me back then. I knew what I wanted to do.
You were a mechanic, right?
Yes. And since the day I could possibly do that is what I wanted to do. I worked in a transmission shop and then went from there to an automotive shop and stayed there, even being certified as a woman-owned company was Zizza Highway Services. I was doing both. But the men would, and I can't even say just men. I've had women walk right by me and go right to the man working at least, and they would just send them right back up to me. So it's been with me for my entire life. So
I'd like to go.
As a young kid.
On that, I'd like to go back a little further, if you don't mind, and say what drove you to want to be a mechanic. What did that come from your father, from your mother?
It came from one of my brothers. I'm one of 7 children, 4 boys. Raised with all boys. The girl, my sister didn't come till later in life, so I was raised with all boys. That obviously could have had something to do with it. The sports. I'm very athletic. My brother was always working on cars. I was just always interested in it. So I was always right there with him all the time. I didn't have such a great childhood. I think that drove me to my success today. I didn't want to have the life that I had as a child. But I've been working, delivering newspapers and delivered the bulletin from the time I was 12 years old, and still working in this office today, even being as successful as I am. It's just the no's in my life. You can't do it. You can't do it. You can't do it. From being a newspaper delivery person that was all men, all boys, to being an auto mechanic, which was all men. I was actually the first, I'm sure Angie will tell this story. I was actually the first woman in Delaware County to have her state inspection license. So that was a huge thing for me. I was in the papers, the Inquirer and the Bulletin, all about that back then. I am a different breed. I know this today. Angie will tell you that I'm not the normal woman that I'm supposed to be. I am married.
What's normal anyway? What's normal anyway?
I don't know what normal is.
You don't follow a particular social prescription. You go into this certain career field, and I think it's really important to note the perception of a woman being an auto mechanic back 30 years ago, even to other women, didn't necessarily trust she was potentially competent enough as the men were to do mechanics, right?
I'm sure.
And as somebody who has a younger sister who's also an auto mechanic, my sister's own husband defers to her when it comes to fixing the car. So I think it's really important to note that. And I have had the pleasure and of being in the rooms with Arlene when she's been in very, very large and very important business meetings where she is the only woman in the room, and I'm there as kind of a supportive consultant. Arlene, maybe it'd be helpful to kind of tell, I know you and I've got many of these stories. I know there's a couple defining moments, I think, for you that really helped you really level up your own ownership and your own ability in interacting in those spaces. And we were talking offline about it. I'd love maybe to share one or two of those stories with our listeners and with Mark, and we've got some other questions around that too.
I remember one particularly, and I talking about this one, I had gone up to New York to a big meeting for the railroad to work on the railroad. They obviously a government job need a spend for a smaller company or a woman-owned company, DBE disadvantaged company. My son and I had gone up. There was this one particular owner of a company that was there, a pretty big company at the time, who was just so defiant. Just so defiant that I couldn't do it. I can't do it. Why do I have to do it? Why do we have to give her some money? Why do we have to give her the spend? Why do we have to give her the work? And I literally saw my son back up in the chair, getting nervous because he saw me, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, she's going to explode. And I didn't explode, but I did stand up, explain to him why this has to be, which we don't have time for that right now, why this is a good fit for me being here. I am the only woman here. And we just went on to argue back and forth. And at the end of the conversation, at the end of the meeting, I had everybody but him, including one of the biggest tree companies in the world, come up to me. And I have been very successful with them since that day. They and other companies have made me who I am today. I will agree to that, but I am way bigger than he will ever be. So I need him. I wish I could go to a meeting with him now and sit there and have him say, why do we have to use you? So that was one of my biggest, best, saddest moments of my life. I was very nervous, as I always am, very scared, very nervous, sweating, my hands, my palms, my heart was racing out of my chest. But again, those are the moments that have defined who I am today. And my son talks about this moment all the time at business meetings, at dinners, family parties. He will never forget that moment that his mom stood up and spoke like that. So it was great. It was a great moment in my life.
That's a great story. If you run into that guy again after you explode on him, at some point you might want to thank him because you might not have gotten that strength without him, right? Have you? That's great. Yeah. That's great.
It's actually that's kind of your Barbara Corcoran moment of just go ahead and tell me that I won't be successful without you. And that's going to be that's the driver, I think, for
I went back to the shop that day, and I was like, this is not going to happen. This is just not going to happen. So
by the way, I just want to go back like a little bit before that. And you were talking about the challenges and the expectations of a woman and being shocked that you'd want to be a mechanic and things like that. So I can just relate to this, and I just want to expand on that a second because we were talking a little bit right before the show about you're part Italian, grew up in Italian culture. Angie's Italian. My wife is full Italian, and she's a little older than all of us. I shouldn't say that, but she, she grew up, and really the only thing she could really be was like like a nurse or a secretary. I mean, it was basically what she was told, you know. And a nurse would even be a high challenge, you know. It's like you should go work in an office or something like that and get married, and that was it. And my wife was a fighter. She didn't like that. And she had to fight her way to go to college. She went to Penn State to get her master's in psychology. She ultimately became a family therapist with all PhD, all but dissertation. And that was, in my Jewish culture, they would call that a shanda, you know, that you would defy the family like that and do all those things. Now her mother, who's 100, occasionally will express her pride in what she did, but she was not. And
I could feel, I feel it in you that it expresses your pride as well. You know, you're that type of person, and I could tell the moment I met you. You know, you're just that guy. You know, that you feel good that your wife did that, and that's how my husband has been as well. It's always been like that. He has underestimated us. I will say that. There's been times when I think this job may be too big for us. And I'm like, no, it's not too big for us. We can handle it. You know, from the biggest jobs that I have today. But he's always been that guy like yourself, you know, who
supportive.
No, and it's maybe good that he's a little conservative too, because sometimes balance is a good thing too. You know,
sure. So, I agree 100%.
Yeah, so that's great. So listen, you sound, when people listening, and to me, like, you know, I'm a little afraid to, like, you know, get in your way. I'm teasing. No, I admire your strength, and I know you sound very serious, but I just got a giggle out of you. And I understand because, you know, I think people have picked up on the fact that you and Ange are close and good friends and you've worked together. So I understand. I've heard a few funny stories, some of which I won't repeat on the radio, but I did, I heard that occasionally, if either one of you wants to expand on this, you have these little giggle fests. So maybe one's coming on, but tell me about that.
It's very true. It's from the first time that we met. You know, sometimes this happens. I think it's a true story in life and business and family, that there are certain things that connect and certain things that don't. And we've always connected right from the very beginning, to the point now that we can literally look across the room at each other without saying a word, and with one look, we will get into a giggle fest that is so extreme, to the point that her 93-year-old mother will have to discipline us like we're 7. And it's a true story, and it's one of my greatest joys. And I think when we did work together, and I was, you know, supporting ZHS on a consulting basis too, sometimes you need that for stress relief, right? So it's a good break. And with that, I think we're going to take a 2-minute break, or a break here, and we'll be right back.
Establishing a self-directed Roth IRA or other self-directed retirement plan offers access to investment options usually only available to well-connected or wealthy individuals. Anyone can build wealth and achieve tax-free income for life and financial freedom without the inordinate risk of speculative investing, securities trading, exotic financial instruments, or hoping for the best from the stock market. Since their inception in 2003, Camaplan has come to be synonymous with expertise, flexibility, responsiveness, and diversity of investment choices. They provide innovative investment opportunities for investors seeking direct control and more choices in how they deploy their investment capital. Camaplan doesn't just make it possible to invest in alternative assets, they also teach investors how to put their money to work. Take the road to financial freedom today. Go to camaplan.com/IRA.
We are back with Arlene Zizza officially, but we know it's really Zizza, like pizza. And great to have you here, Arlene. And as I'm listening to you, I do a lot of work with family businesses. I grew up in a family business, and that's been a lot of my work. And you're a certified woman-owned business, as is Ange's business, and that's something we've talked about. And in addition to that, though, your husband's in the business and your sons are in the business.
And our daughter, correct.
Oh, and your daughter's in as well. So tell me about the family dynamic in the business and how that works.
Well, you know, like I said earlier, Mike's a huge part of Zizza Highway Services, has been since day one. He himself, you know, had a father who died very young and suddenly had a huge company. And was stuck as a young boy doing sweeping, a sweeping company. So he's been doing that. And then, obviously we were married. We had Mike already had a son who was a little older when I met them. And then we together have a daughter and a son who now are in their 30s and 40s and have successfully came up into the company. I'm not going to say it was 100% beautiful because it was not. There's a lot of argument. There's a lot of fights. There's a lot of, I see it this way. You see it that way. Mike is old school. I'm stuck in the middle constantly, trying to, divert his wants and their needs and whatnot. It took a long time for my daughter to finally come up that ladder. She is here now. It has been my most successful and beautiful moment in my life because I want her here. I need her here. She needs to be the succession to this company if it wants to continue on as a woman-owned company. She needs to continue on. She understands that now. So it's been a lot of hardships with our family, but a lot of great. Our sons are amazing. They run most of the outside stuff now. We just do the inside stuff. Mike is well on his way of trying to retire here. They've grown and they've grown into this company, and it's been wonderful. But like I said, I'm not going to say that it was great. There is a lot of arguments, as in any family.
Well, I'm glad you didn't tell me it was all peaches and cream because I wouldn't have believed you. But
it's not.
But having said that, so what do you think? What is the secret, if you have one, and what do you think is the formula for getting through being a family together? Because your whole family's in the business, and you work together, and you've got challenges and you've got arguments. If you had to look at, how you get through it. I think how I get through it is allowing them to grow,
which I have done this lately, and I see that this is much better. I've given them the chance to prove to me that they can do this. They can get this job and they can do it. Where I think 10 years ago, I did not allow that. But today I'm allowing them to express to me how they feel about things that they don't like or that, they're trying to overcome or be successful in their own right. And I think that's a huge thing. If you allow your children to make suggestions to you and go with the suggestions, and let them fail. I can't tell you how many times I have failed through my life. I didn't have parents that I'm not saying that I didn't have parents. I had, wonderful parents. My mom's still in my life today, but I didn't have anybody to teach me along the way, like my children do. If things were handed to them, they were not handed to me. So I did all the hard work, and they're here now, and they need to continue. And I think that's a huge thing. But
your point about that they need to fail, I think, is a really important one too.
They need to fail, and I struggle with that with my husband, trying to allow them to fail at things because he just doesn't see it that way. So we do argue a lot about that. So like I said before, I'm always in the middle, trying to balance it as best I can. It doesn't always work, but I think lately for the past 4 or 5 years, I'm trying to allow them their space, allow them to get into the company the way they want to get into the company. So I think that's the only way it's going to work because they don't want to do everything that I'm doing. Right? They that's the only way it's going to work with a family. Well, if you do it that way.
It's a great lead into my last question, but before that, I want to just say I really appreciate how candid you're being. I often tell people I'm a fiscal therapist. I wrote a book called Fiscal Therapy. And for whatever reasons, you're sharing very nicely today, more than most guests. Hope Mike's okay with you after when he hears the.
He's quite used to it. Believe me.
I know, I'm sure.
Yeah, he's quite used to it.
And Mark, before you ask the last question, I know we've got about 2 minutes left, but
Sure.
I just wanted to kind of piggyback on one last point that I think Arlene's making is that it's a challenge to be in a family business as a founder and an entrepreneur and learning when to let go. But I think you're also speaking to the fact that by doing that and allowing the younger, voices or just different voices in your business to speak up and be heard, it really does allow for innovation. So whether you're a corporate public company or a family-run business, allowing that conversation to innovate is really important.
Well, that's leadership.
Exactly. And you've always been an inspirational leader. So I know we only have 2 minutes left, and Mark, you have a really good kind of closing question for us here.
Well, yes. So you've already alluded a lot to the future, and it sounds like you've planned very well for the future with your family and with your having brought your daughter in, so it can continue as a woman-owned business. But you're still in charge. So Arlene, if I were to ask you about, and this could be personal as well as business, but if you looked ahead to the future, I like to ask a 3-year question. So let's just say this is May of 2026, and you're looking back on the last 3 years. What would have had to have happened in your life and your business for you to feel that was a successful 3-year period?
Let me think about that. I don't know. I'm just trying to make it so that our daughter continues this legacy here. I'm not going to lie, I'm tired. But 3 years from now, I would have never thought I'd be where I'm at 3 years ago, where I'm at today. Never in a million years. So 3 years from now, I would think we are going to be way more successful than we are today. Just because I'm still here, I'm still growing, I'm still getting bigger jobs than I've ever thought I could get before. So I think 3 years from now, I will be bigger and better than I am 3 years ago or 3 years today.
So you see business growth, significant growth?
Business growth like you can't believe. I foresee it, especially with this new transaction. I believe that we are going to grow way bigger than we are now, probably to a place where there's going to be another CEO in this seat.
Very nice. Meaning someone outside of the family, or possibly
outside the family. Yeah,
outside.
I would think somebody outside the family.
But your plan is to continue to have the family involved.
I will own this company. My kids will own this company, and my granddaughter, who is coming up that ladder just the same as our daughter, is going to own this company.
That's
this
great.
Is my dream,
Yep.
And this is my legacy, that these kids will continue with this woman-owned company for their life. They will never struggle like I did, and they will continue this Zizza Highway Services.
You have a very clear vision for the future.
I have a very clear vision.
And you've been a great guest, Arlene. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, my friend.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. And all of you have a great day, and we'll see you next week on Founders Forum.
We hope you enjoyed your time with Founders Forum today and you found value to take with you throughout your day. Join us again next week for another episode of Founders Forum on WWDB Talk Radio, and always at the Founders Forum show page at WWDBAM.com.